In this lesson, you will learn theoretical and experimental probability. Probability based on experimental data is called experimental probability. That is, when you conduct some experiments and you're basing your probability based on the experimental data, such type of a probability is called experimental probability. You find the experimental probability of an event by using the results of an experiment or trial. Experiment is also called as trial, repeated many times. So when you take the data based on the experiment and then you find the probability, such type of a probability is called experimental probability. How do you find the experimental probability? The probability of an event is the number of times the event occurs divided by the total number of trials. In other words, the total number of trials is the number of times you have conducted the experiment, and the number of times event occurs is how many times what you were looking for occurred in the experiment. So the probability of an experimental probability of an event is the number of times the event occurs divided by the total number of trials. Let's look at this problem. The scientist Gregor Mendel crossbred green seed plants and yellow seed plants. Out of 8,023 crosses, 6,022 plants had yellow seeds and 2,001 had green seeds. Find the probability that a plant had green seeds. So we are finding the probability of green. How do you find the probability? It is the total number of trials. The total number of experiments Gregor Mendel did was 8,023. So 8,023. We are looking for green. How many times did he land up with the green seeds? 2,001. So 2,001 times the green seeds occurred. So the probability of green is 2,001 divided by 8,023. It is 0.249. So the probability of the green seeds is 0.249. Let's try another. Use the table at the left. Find the experimental probability of getting heads. Now we are finding the probability of getting heads. So the probability of getting heads is equal to how many times was the experiment conducted. If you see, this is 5 plus 3, 8, and this is 10 plus 2, 12. So the total number of times the experiment was conducted was 20. How many times did the coin land up with heads? 8. So 8 over 20, which is 0.4. So the experimental probability of getting heads in this problem is 0.4. You can toss a coin to find the experimental probability of getting heads. You can find the theoretical probability without using trials. If you do not conduct any experiment and you're just trying to find the probability without experimenting, such type of a probability is called theoretical probability. To find the theoretical probability, use the formula. Theoretical probability is the total number of possible outcomes will be in the denominator and the number of favorable outcomes will be in the numerator. In other words, theoretical probability is the number of favorable outcomes, what you're looking for, divided by the total number of possible outcomes. For example, in a coin, what is the probability of a coin landing on heads? What are the total number of possible outcomes? 2, because there are only 2 sides in a coin. How many heads are there in the coin? 1. So the probability of a coin landing on heads is 1/2. Let's take a number cube, for example, and so on. What is the probability of a number cube landing on an even number? What are the total possibilities in number cube? There are 6, because 6 numbers are there in a cube. And how many even numbers are there? It's 2, 4, and 6. So there are 3 favorable outcomes of even numbers. So the probability of a cube landing on an even number is 3/6. If you simplify this, 1/2. So theoretical probability is the number of favorable outcomes divided by the total number of possible outcomes. Let's identify what type of a probability is this. The table shows the results of a survey. Does 55% represent experimental or theoretical probability? The survey was conducted. So what type of a probability is this? Is it a theoretical probability or an experimental probability? The survey records actual responses from town voters. So 55% represents experimental probability because the survey was conducted, an experiment was done. A bag contains 2 red cubes and 3 white cubes. Does the probability of red equals 2/5 represent experimental or theoretical probability? Was the experiment conducted? No. So the probability of red is equal to 2/5 represents theoretical probability. Sometimes probabilities are expressed in the form of a ratio called odds. When you express probabilities in the form of ratios, they are called odds. There are 2 types of odds, odds in favor and odds against. Odds in favor of an event is the ratio of the number of favorable outcomes to the number of unfavorable outcomes. So odds in favor, you're looking for favorable outcomes first as compared to the unfavorable outcomes. Odds against an event is the ratio of the number of unfavorable outcomes to the number of favorable outcomes. So in odds against, you are first looking for the unfavorable outcomes to the number of favorable outcomes. Let's look at this problem. Suppose you select a ball at random from the golf balls shown at the left. What are the odds in favor of selecting a yellow ball? So in favor, so first we have to look for in favor of yellow balls. So how many yellow balls are there? 2. And how many orange balls? Unfavorable, what we are not looking for. There are 5 orange balls. So the odds of in favor of selecting a yellow balls is 2/5. Same thing, suppose you select a ball. 2 balls are yellow and 5 are orange. So the odds of selecting a yellow ball at random are 2/5. What are the odds against selecting a yellow ball at random? It is odds against yellow. So how many balls are not yellow? 5. So the odds are 5 unfavorable to 2 yellow balls. So the ratio of odds against yellow is 5 to 2.